Alright, welcome to what I can't believe is another Tiny Glade building video. I honestly didn't think that I had enough material for another one, and to be fair, these are definitely the table scraps. However, I made the mistake of going through my screenshots from previous playtests, so really ancient stuff, and rediscovered some techniques in those that we used back then that I'd completely forgotten about again. So there's a couple of things regarding that, and then a couple more discoveries were made concerning blind window technology, specifically using the windows with the clotheslines. And I realized that there was one thing that I missed in my all building interactions video. And then there's a couple of clarifications, corrections, tips regarding both arcading from my 40+ video and then flying buttresses from my plus 10 more video. So with all of those things combined, I have another list like 10 items strong, and we're back here at this church that I did in order to try out flying buttresses, but for realsies. So the same way that with blind windows in my first video, I was like, this is kind of plain. I would like to do this in a bigger build. So too have I gone into here and created a bigger, more elaborate build for flying buttresses. Now, first couple of things. In my first video regarding arcading, for some reason I was under the impression that you had to cut the block first in order to make arcades. And I don't know why I thought that, but as you can see, it works perfectly fine with an intact block. The only difference between cutting the block first and not cutting it is that, of course, like this, the block has the Merlon trim at the top. These here, and if I was to cut it, then it would have this looks ridiculous, then it would have a regular uneven brick top. Alright, so that's that. You can do arcading with blocks, you don't need to cut these first, and in fact they are a lot easier to wrangle when you still have them in block form because you can still adjust them. So that's my point on arcading. A point on flying buttresses. Now, when I did flying buttresses in the video, they didn't look quite this clean. They often had a lot of brick debris left on them, kind of like that here. Something like this, right? However, I have made an accidental discovery while building this. Let me take some blocks out of the middle here so that you can see what is going on. Easier said than done. Okay, so down here I have terrain under this, and for some reason, when your arch has 1 foot on the terrain, 1 foot off the terrain, there's this one sweet spot in adjusting its height where at the very bottom of travel, it just gives you a flat line. But then if you go far enough up with this, that the game says, okay, so the left side of this brick stack is above the arch. Then it adjusts the rest of what it wants to generate down, which means that it, on the downslope, which means that it adjusts it below the height of the buttress itself, so all of the bricks get deleted as part of the arch interior. So you get these really clean, incredibly clean looking buttresses, and it is, quite frankly, amazing. And if this is unintended behavior, I hope they never fix it, because these look fantastic. Here we go. Alright, so that's my note on buttresses, and I think that is all that I have to show you in this world. Let us jump into a couple of other worlds that I've created to showcase some of these other things. And since we're already on corrections, let's jump to the one about the interaction that I forgot in my all building interactions video. Let's go. Alright, so what did I forget? What I forgot was this ladder. And it's really quite simple. You take a piece of terrain, bring it up, take a block, and if your block goes down the cliff face and you then tell the game, hey, put a door there, it's gonna go, that is too tall for me to put a staircase, and instead you get a ladder. Now I'm honestly unsure what kind of applications there could be for this interaction. I try to do something here where it's like, well, I guess I can pretend that the ladder doesn't just lead up to the door, it could also lead down to the to this balcony here, maybe. But I forgot to mention that one, so I want to mention it here, and if you can find a use for it, I would love to see it. Anyway, something else on this map. So in my last video we did a bunch of putting things on grass that shouldn't go there and putting a bunch of things on paved road that shouldn't go there. Here's one more. Here's doors on ostensibly grass ground. If you've seen the last video, you already know how it's done. You bring this up here, put the doors down, bring it back down. Game doesn't realize. Ooh, the doors, they're on the grass. Ooh. Yeah, I thought I would point that out simply because it's another point on the list, and I actually found it by accident while doing my last video. So that was really funny to me. Though I do think that I cut that out. Anyway, one last interaction, or one last thing that I found, is a footstool of some sort. At least that's how it registers in my head. And it's actually just the top part of a ladder. And the way that you get this, right? So when you place a window, it generates clutter, and it generates clutter on these rooftops and on flat ground as well. However, ignore windows. Another thing that generates clutter is the door that you get through using path. Now, that clutter generates on the ground even when there is a rooftop over it. So as you can see down here, I got a couple of doors, and I've put all of these doors in here essentially until eventually the game gave me a ladder. And once you have the ladder where you want it, or if you want it, or if you get it at all and you're like, all right, wherever that just generated, I'll take it. You just put a floor over it, and once that is all that's left, it to me kind of looks like a footstool, which can be a detail you could use, I guess. It's also one of those rather random ones. Beyond that, this wasn't my own idea, and most of the developments with blind windows that I'm going to show you this time are all going to come from the same person, who is not me, but instead come from Vampy. I did my best, dude. Come from Vampy, back on the Discord server again. So this is obviously, once again, blind windows using flower boxes in order to create this sort of stacked garden look, which honestly looks great and is the first application I have found for triple layered wall. Because obviously you can't get these this close together, because these are all double windows, and the closest you can get two double windows together is like this. Now you can get them closer together by going back to my first video and taking the if you pull hard enough, eventually it will give approach. But of course, if you do that, then these windows are very unstable. As soon as you change something, they explode. However, these... Okay, the bottom one exploded because I put a door under it. But these are stable. These don't break. And the reason why they don't break is because I have a third wall in here. So if you wanted to do this and you're like, okay, well, I can put down one window and then I take a block and I make it a blind window, and then I can put another one on this block, and then I can double them up, except of course you're gonna have a completed window in there now. So take a third block, and if you chuck that one in there as well, then you can make the windows blind again, despite two of them being layered on top of one another. So that's exactly what I did here. There's this block in here, which has two of the windows on it. Then there's this block on here, which is just to make them blind again. And then there's this one that has the other set of windows. And that's how you get this stacked garden kind of look. Completely stable. And in a way that it won't explode. Speaking of exploding, our doors back here exploded. But yeah, that's our first couple of ideas. Let me just go back until I get my doors back. Here they are. And from there, let us move on to my other world. Okay, and let's continue with the other things that Vampy has taught me. So, for one, if you double up the windows with the clotheslines, you can get this sort of zigzagging look. Now, it's not great because it also changes every time that I load this map. I haven't found a way to control it yet, but as I'm sure you're aware, these clotheslines also can go across gaps like this, right? Now, if you use a blind window, you can get a clothesline, quote unquote, without a window. So that's what I did here. But if you double them up, if you stick two inside one another, you can see that I have one window here, which has that piece of clothing on it, and then I have another one that goes across the street. And if you do it like this on practically every window, then you can get clotheslines that go across the street and then on the other side of a window go across the street again. And if you played around with it enough, eventually you might be able to get a proper zigzag. But it is notoriously unstable. And let me actually see what I can do if I reload this map. Hold up. Alright, loading the map is actually not enough, gotta restart the game, but this is this map after one restart. Alright, I restarted again, changed a couple of things admittedly, but let's take a look in this, and one more time. This is it now, and I'm not entirely sure. Did you have two clotheslines clipping through you the last time, or did I just not see, or what was up with that? Who knows? Anyway, my point being, this isn't exactly the most stable technology, but you can use it, and as long as you stay in the session and get your screenshots in when you have it the way that you want it to be, I'm sure that you can do something quite nice with it. Vampy himself actually managed to get quite a nice zigzag pattern going that I wasn't quite able to replicate before I ran out of patience. But the other thing they did was take this corner window. Mr. Window, let's come up here. Take this corner window and stick it on a corner like this to make it appear like the clothesline terminates somewhere where it doesn't. And then the last thing, you don't generally have clothes on rooftop windows. However, if you take, here you go, a half dormer with a clothesline on it and stack another roof inside of it, you can make it look like it. It's also nice. Alright, and I think that's all I have for clotheslines. I will say, definitely the most annoying technology I've played with yet. I really love the results that it can get. But man, is it difficult. Man, is it difficult. So, If one of you guys can come up with a better way of controlling their behavior, that would be awesome. Until that day comes, I'm not entirely sure how much I'm going to be playing with these myself. I will be honest. But that's life, isn't it? Anyway, one thing that isn't a technique, it's more of a thing that I would like to do and that I would like to see other people do more as well, is when I have towers, especially round towers, I like to arrange my windows in a sort of spiraling pattern. It's like, this is where the staircase is. I don't know if I mentioned that in my first video. If I did, then I'm mentioning it here again because I really do love this. And if I didn't, then yeah, give this a try. I like it. Anyway, something a little more clever. Chicken coop. At least my best analog to a chicken coop. It is a roofed structure with eggs in it. Now this one's a little funky. So obviously this is just a piece with arches in it. We don't really care about that. But this is a lot, and I do mean a lot, of separate rooftop pieces, all more or less identical in size, but I've stacked on top of one another to make them generate as many birds' nests as possible so that I can get some eggs. So essentially the only thing that I did was grab a piece, hold control. God damn it. Alright, fine. Hold control and then place it, press 1 to get the piece in your hand again, place it. I'm still holding control, press 1, place it, press 1, place it, press 1, place it. And then one by one, bring them down, 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 and then make it cave in, in, and ideally bring these down, 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 down. There you go. And eventually, once you have enough of them stacked, they'll start to spawn multiple birds' nests along this edge. And that is how I get the eggs into my chicken coop. This one could definitely still use some work, but it kind of came to me while I was messing around. Something a little farm animal-ish. Something else that's a little farm animal-ish, and that I would also like to pitch as a sort of challenge, a sort of stable. And I like doing stables. We used to do stables when we still had fences. And my main problem with making stables ever since we've lost fences has been, how do I separate the different stalls for the horses from one another, right? Because I need path in here in order to make the arches nice and even. But if I have path in here and then I just try to draw a wall through it, I won't get a wall no matter how low I take that arch. I'll always have an arch. And it came to me like a lightning bolt, I think this morning, either this morning or last night, that of course, if you take a minimum sized piece of wall, you do just get the column. So if you go in here, and I don't have an arch to do this with now, but we'll just pretend that one of the arches terminates here. You just hold control and you draw yourself a little piece, go a little further, still holding control, draw another piece, draw it wide enough for it to stick. There you go, draw another piece. Come on. Come on. There you go. And you just keep doing that. And eventually, you have a wall. Now you gotta bring these down. And then you also gotta bring the arch, quote unquote, down. And somewhere around the center of each of these columns is what the game considers to be the arch that we're part of. And of course, now that I've made this so tight with the other walls as well, it's very difficult to actually grab. So give me these. Alright. So somewhere towards the center of every one of these is It's like 1 pixel wide. Arch that the game considers real. Grab that. Oh, that's you. Damn it. Grab that. There you go. Can slowly but surely bring these down. Bring these down. And that's how you get something like a wall between the different stalls in your stable. Now, if you find a better way of doing this before we get fences back, I don't know, fucking add me on Twitter or something, because this is awful. I'm glad that I have it again, and honestly, it's not the worst thing that I've done, but still, very finicky, very questionable. But yeah, you know, for your consideration, you can get stalled into what I consider to be a fine stable. Something that's fine as a stable. One thing I wanted to mention on this topic. Ah, right, yes, because it occurred to me while I was doing that. You usually know that the piece is big enough to stick once you are still moving your mouse, but it stops coming closer to you, right? There you go. Can you see those tiny steps that it takes in my direction? And once it stops taking those steps, that's when it's wide enough. But yeah, that's how you can tell that they're big enough to stand on their own. Now, 2 last ancient techniques. This sort of fence that we used to do, sort of for a halfway between actual fences as we had them back in the day and putting a solid wall down. If you put the broken windows in them in, you know, a bit of a pattern, they can get something that's a little bit like a privacy screen. At least that's the best term we had come up with at the time for these. Because you can sort of see through it, but it's also sort of solid, so it was pretty good. The only problem, of course, being that with ground clutter now, you might have to play with these a bit until your garden stops being taken up by wheels, and I never did figure out what these actually represent. Look like bags of flour. But yeah, so that's a slight complication nowadays, but you know, if you find a use for this sort of design, I encourage you to use it. And with that, the last of the ancient techniques. And this one's very sketchy. We still need lower brick stacks. We needed them lower back then, and we still need them lower now. Anyway, if you're making a ruin, and maybe I overdid it a little bit for how small this ruin is, but do throw some loose bricks on the ground, you know, grab the wall tool, make a small brick stack, bring it down, and add some clutter. You know, where did all the rocks go that must have fallen off of a wall in order to make the building look this bad? Well, this is where they went. They went in the grass right here on location. You know, I have a better example in my old screenshots, but I didn't feel like doing an entire ruin building for this video. So a ruined chicken coop is all you're getting, and you know, if this idea makes sense to you, and if this is something that you can see yourself using, then I encourage you to, and I encourage you to do better and to find more creative ways of using it. Anyway, what's that, like 25 minutes, half an hour, 25 minutes? That is pretty good, and that's everything on my list. Corner windows, stacking dormers, half dormers, doubling up, clothesline windows, chicken coop, footstool, the old ladder, the broken privacy fence, spiral windows, stables, window doors on grass, minimum size brick stacks as brick clutter in ruins. That's my list. That's some amount of tips and tricks. And thank you once again for tuning in. Let me take this back to a much nicer world to look at. Extra! Extra! New technique discovered. Extra. Extra. That's what the newspaper boys used to yell, right? Whatever. So I had the video rendered, I had the video uploaded, I was waiting for the video to process up to standard definition when I tabbed into the creations channel on the Discord, and somebody had found a new way of using our lanterns. And I thought it was brilliant, and so I asked them if I can include it in my video. They gave me the go-ahead, and I'm so grateful because this is awesome. They put it in quotation marks, but I think they were just being humble. They called it covered welds. And what they did was they took this technology that we've talked about before of sticking lanterns inside of blocks to create this sort of grate look, like there is a well here that somebody had put a grate over. And first of all, the wooden lattice looks awesome on its own, and second of all, I can totally see it. The other thing that I can see is like a light shaft down to maybe a cistern or something, put that over top. But I think it's awesome, and I really needed to include it here, so I'm going to re-render this video now. But yeah, it's exactly what you think it is. It is just lanterns arranged in a lattice. You put that over a minimum sized block in this case, and yeah, a covered well or a covered light shaft, something like that. Something that you would cover with a grate. It's awesome. I love it. Alright, and with that, cut back to me earlier today when I didn't already know about this. Alright, but yeah, thank you as always for tuning in, and I hope as always that some of these ideas are useful to you, that you can find applications for these in your own builds. I would love it if you could find something brilliant to do with the things that I've shown you today. Minor though all of these notes were, like I said, table scraps. But if you find a good application of them, do post it online so that I can find your application of my ideas or your application of Vampy's ideas, and so that I can steal your application of them back and make use of it myself. Start a real exchange of ideas here. I would love that. Anyway, I hope that this is I definitely hope that this is gonna be the last one. I was already surprised when I found 10 more after my 40 video, but I was surprised when I found 10 more after my 10 more video. So I really hope that this is now all, and that we can all walk into the sunset satisfied. If one of the things in this video gave you a brilliant idea, specifically regarding window-in-window technology, or blind window technology, whatever I call these, do it now, do it while the demo is out, because I do have it on good authority that all of this misbehavior that we've been using to stack windows inside one another is fairly high on the chopping block of gameplay weirdness that is supposed to be fixed by release. So explore your options now, because you might not be able to get your fill later. But with all of that said and done, thank you as always for tuning in. I won't keep you here any longer. Enjoy your day, enjoy the demo while it's still out, and see you again next time. Goodbye.